The first thing Claire remembered was the sound, not the blaring horn or the screeching tires, though those came later, but the silence, the eerie stillness just before everything shattered. That split second when time seemed to fold inward and the world held its breath. Then the chaos came. Metal groaned, glass exploded, and the violent jolt of her body being thrown sideways smashed her consciousness into darkness. She woke up 3 days later in a stark, white hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and stale air. Her head throbbed. Her ribs ached. Tubes poked out from her arms. Machines beeped steadily to her left. A nurse noticed her stirring and called out gently, "Claire, can you hear me?" Claire blinked slowly, lips dry and cracked. She turned her head toward the voice and gave the slightest nod. A flurry of activity followed. Doctors entered. Lights were shone into her eyes. Questions were asked, her name, the date, who the president was. She answered none of them, not because she couldn't, but because she chose not to, because Claire remembered everything. Not just the crash, the exact moment the black SUV clipped the rear of her car on that winding stretch of country road, sending her spinning into the guardrail, but also the moments leading up to it. The long drive from her art studio after a late night preparing for an exhibit. The light drizzle starting to turn into rain. The feeling that something was wrong when the same car appeared in her rearview mirror 3 times that day. And the driver, the man behind the wheel of that SUV, wasn't a stranger. She saw his face for a second before she lost control. Ethan, her sister's boyfriend. She didn't scream when the memory came. She didn't gasp or cry. She simply closed her eyes and let the doctors continue their assessment. The word amnesia floated in the room like dust caught in the light. One of the doctors suggested it. The others nodded in agreement. She had suffered a head injury. Confusion was normal. Short-term memory loss, expected. Her husband, Daniel, arrived the next morning, face pale and shaken. His eyes welled up when he saw her. He rushed to her bedside, took her hand, and whispered, "Claire, oh God, I thought I lost you." She looked at him blankly, her heart hammering beneath her hospital gown. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. His face contorted, heartbreak mixed with hope. "It's me, Daniel. I'm your husband. Don't you remember?" She stared through him. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't." And just like that, the mask was on. It wasn't a decision she had planned. The lies slipped from her mouth as instinctively as a breath. But as soon as it was out, she knew it was the right one. Something about the accident didn't feel like an accident. And Ethan's presence on that road was no coincidence. If she revealed she remembered, whoever wanted her gone might try again. And next time, they'd make sure she didn't wake up. Over the next few days, Claire perfected her performance. She answered only basic questions, always with a tone of hesitant confusion. She let them explain her life to her job at the gallery, her marriage to Daniel, her childhood with Megan. She smiled weakly when shown photographs. She nodded politely at visits from friends. But in the back of her mind, she was replaying every detail of that night, cataloging every inconsistency in the stories being told around her. Her sister Megan visited often. Too often. She'd always been close, but something about her sudden attentiveness made Claire uneasy. Megan brought flowers, hand lotion, even painted Claire's nails while chatting endlessly about the past, childhood memories, shared vacations, silly pranks. But Claire noticed what Megan didn't talk about, Ethan. Not once did she mention him. Not his name, not a passing reference, not a single word. And that silence said more than a confession. On the 5th day in the hospital, Claire had her first moment alone since waking up. A nurse had left her meal tray, and Daniel had gone to take a phone call. The window was slightly open, letting in the scent of wet pavement and distant spring blossoms. Claire sat up, slowly, her muscles sore but functioning. She turned off the heart monitor to avoid drawing attention, then gingerly pulled herself out of bed. She limped to the bathroom, shut the door, and searched quickly. She found what she needed, a small notepad and a pen in the drawer beneath the sink. With trembling hands, she flipped it open and began to write. April 12th. I remember everything. The crash wasn't random. Ethan was behind me. Black SUV. No headlights. He accelerated. Clipped me on the left. I saw his face. Megan's boyfriend. Why was he there? Why'd he do it? Do not trust Daniel. Something feels wrong. Too calm. Too prepared. She wrote small, tearing the pages into halves and folding them tightly. She slipped them behind the removable vent panel beside the toilet, replacing the cover carefully. She'd recover them later, when she was stronger. That night, when a nurse came in to check on her, Claire feigned a headache and muttered about a few flickers of memory. Maybe from high school? The nurse encouraged her to keep a positive mindset. Claire nodded dutifully. The truth was, she had no intention of rushing her recovery. The next morning, a social worker stopped by to assess her cognitive condition. Claire recited a few pre-fed memories Daniel had shared, peppered with confusion and pauses. The social worker was kind, gentle, but clearly noting the inconsistencies. Claire could see it in her eyes. But that didn't matter. Claire had her own plan. When asked if she wanted to begin physical therapy to prepare for discharge, she said yes. When asked if she'd be comfortable returning home with Daniel, she hesitated just long enough to make them believe she trusted him a little but was unsure. It was enough to make him seem like a safe caregiver without removing suspicion altogether. The following week, Claire was wheeled to the car and helped inside. Daniel drove. Megan was in the passenger seat. Claire sat silently in the back, her gaze locked on the road as landmarks blurred past. She recognized the curve where the accident had happened. It passed in seconds, but her breath caught in her throat. Her knuckles tightened around the handle on the door. She leaned forward. Do either of you know where the accident happened? Megan turned around. Sweetie, don't worry about that now. It's better not to dwell. You need to heal. Claire nodded slowly. You're right, she whispered. But in her mind, the gears were spinning. She'd been right to pretend, because the look Megan and Daniel exchanged in the rearview mirror was not one of concern. It was fear. And Claire wasn't just going to heal. She was going to find out why they were so afraid. The house felt colder than Claire remembered. Not in temperature, but in presence. The walls that once wrapped around her like familiarity now stood like silent observers. She had lived here with Daniel for nearly 6 years, but every step she took inside now felt foreign, as if she were intruding in someone else's life. And in a way, she was. Daniel led her through the front door like she was a fragile relic. Let's take it slow, he said in a tone she might have once found sweet. Now it grated. The doctors have said not to overstimulate you. Just ease into things. This is your home, but we'll treat it like it's new. Claire nodded, offering him a soft, unsure smile. Everything does feel new, she replied, clutching the tote bag she'd packed at the hospital. It only had a few essentials, but her real treasure, the notebook, was hidden deep inside, tucked between pages of a large art catalog no one would think to open. Megan hovered behind them like a persistent shadow, offering suggestions about food, lighting, even scent diffusers. Claire allowed the noise to wash over her, nodding when needed, feigning polite detachment. She absorbed everything. The way Daniel tensed when Megan touched his shoulder, the flicker of jealousy in Megan's eyes when Claire noticed, the way both seemed to avoid the topic of the accident like it might set off a bomb. Claire was shown to the guest bedroom rather than the master suite. We figured it might be less overwhelming, Megan said cheerily. Claire agreed, silently relieved. Being away from Daniel, even by a few walls, felt safer. It gave her the space she needed to think. That night, she didn't sleep. The mattress was firm, the sheets smelled like detergent, and her body ached from healing wounds. But it wasn't physical discomfort keeping her awake. It was the noise inside her mind. The inconsistencies, the glances, the quiet behind their words. She stared at the ceiling for hours, mentally reconstructing the crash. The SUV, Ethan, the curve, the sickening sound of twisting steel. At 3 a.m., Claire finally got up. The house was silent. She padded across the hallway in her socks, careful not to step on the creaky floorboard near the linen closet. She slipped into her studio, a converted sunroom at the back of the house, and locked the door behind her. Nothing had changed. Her easels stood untouched, canvases still leaned against the wall, and a layer of fine dust coated her palette knives. She turned on the soft lamp and opened her bag, pulling out the notebook. She flipped to the first entry and began writing. May 2nd. I'm home. It feels staged. I don't believe either of them. I saw a moment, just one, where Megan looked at Daniel like he belonged to her, and he didn't push her away. I think she's still involved with him. If she ever ended it, I think they're trying to control the narrative. I'm not letting them. Tomorrow, I'm going to find my laptop. It wasn't at the hospital. It should be here. Unless someone took it. She ripped out the page, folded it, and taped it behind a loose panel in the back of her largest canvas. The next morning, Claire woke early and began her act again. She shuffled into the kitchen with a dazed look, pretended not to know how the coffee machine worked, and asked Daniel questions about their life together. Some innocent, some pointed. He answered most of them with practiced calm. Did we ever talk about kids? She asked as she buttered her toast. Daniel paused. We did, but you weren't sure. You wanted to focus on your career first. Your art was everything. Claire nodded slowly, pretending to digest the answer, while internally cataloging it. It didn't match what she remembered. She'd been ready 2 years ago. He was the one who insisted they wait. Later that day, while Daniel was at work and Megan ran to the store to get more herbal tea, Claire used the time to search. She started in the master bedroom. Every drawer looked pristine, almost too pristine, like someone had removed anything remotely personal. The jewelry box was still there, but her old journals were gone. She went to the office. The laptop gone. The desk drawers were filled with Daniel's neatly stacked files, all labeled, all locked in alphabetical order. She opened the closet and found a single box tucked away behind winter coats. Inside were some of her things, an old sketchbook, a broken watch, and a flash drive. She pocketed the drive and returned to her room before anyone got home. That night, after pretending to be tired and retreating early, she plugged the flash drive into the ancient backup laptop she'd found buried in the linen closet. It took nearly 10 minutes to load. But once it did, she found a folder labeled Household, Daniel. Inside were scanned copies of insurance documents, banking statements, and something that made her stomach drop. A recent amendment to her life insurance policy. The beneficiary was still Daniel. But just a month before the crash, a second policy had been added. A high-value plan, listed as emergency contact and alternate beneficiary, Megan. Claire stared at the screen, the blood draining from her face. Megan. Why would her sister be a beneficiary? Why was a second policy added so recently? And why hadn't anyone mentioned this? She printed the files quietly and hid the pages beneath her mattress. The next few days passed in a blur of false smiles and forced small talk. Claire began taking walks in the neighborhood, saying she was working on stimulating memory through repetition. In truth, she used the walks to make phone calls from a prepaid burner phone she purchased with cash during a pharmacy run. She contacted a private investigator, a woman named Jackie Cruz, referred by a friend in her old gallery circle. Claire kept the call brief, using a pseudonym. I need someone to look into an accident. I believe it was intentional, she said. There was a pause. Then, Jackie replied, do you have a name? 2. Ethan Price and Daniel Wallace. I believe they're connected, and I think they were involved in a car crash that almost killed me. Understood, Jackie replied. You'll hear from me in 72 hours. I'll be discreet. Claire ended the call and deleted the number. Later that evening, Daniel brought home takeout from her favorite Thai place. He made a big show of setting the table, lighting a candle, opening a bottle of wine. I thought this might bring back some good memories, he said. Claire forced a smile and took a sip. You're sweet, she lied. But inside, she was burning. She watched his movements carefully. The way he poured her glass first. The way he sat across from her instead of beside her like he used to. The way he carefully avoided eye contact when she asked about Ethan. Do I know Megan's boyfriend? She asked casually between bites of pad thai. Daniel froze for a split second. Ethan? Yeah, you met him a few times at family gatherings. Why? Claire shrugged. Just trying to remember faces. I think I dreamed about him. Weird, huh? Daniel smiled weakly. Yeah, weird. That night, she made another journal entry. May 5th, flash drive proves Megan's financially tied to my death. Daniel avoids Ethan's name like it's poison. I mentioned a dream. He flinched. He knows. I'm going to confront Megan soon. I want to see how she reacts. But I have to be careful. If they think I know, they'll panic. And if Ethan was willing to cause a crash once, he might try again. As she wrote, thunder rumbled outside. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Claire stared out the window, watching the drops stream down the glass. It reminded her of that night. The rain, the curve, the headlights vanishing into the dark. She would never forget. She wasn't letting them get away with it. Not now. Not ever. Claire woke before sunrise. Her body still ached from the crash, but her mind had already started racing hours earlier. Dreams blurred with memories. Ethan's face behind the wheel, the sharp twist of the steering wheel in her hands, the moment her car lifted from the ground and slammed into the guardrail. She had replayed the scene so many times, not because she doubted what she saw, but because she feared what would come next. She was living among people who either wanted her dead or knew someone who did. And every morning she woke up alive felt like a gamble. By the time the kettle clicked off in the kitchen, she was already dressed and had her bag packed for the day's plan. She had told Daniel she wanted to walk to the old art supply store downtown, hoping it would spark something. He was hesitant but agreed. Megan offered to drive her, but Claire insisted she wanted to try doing something independently. She even threw in a hesitant smile to sell the lie. What she really needed was time and space. She needed to follow Ethan. She had learned from Daniel's predictable routines that he always left for work around 8:15. The accounting firm where he worked was 20 minutes away, and he often called Megan afterward. Claire suspected their so-called coffee catch-ups weren't entirely innocent. The previous day, she had noticed Ethan's black SUV parked across from a nondescript warehouse just off the freeway. She'd been returning from her walk when she saw it idling near the entrance. It was the same vehicle from the crash. Her stomach had turned when she spotted it. Even the cracked left rear taillight matched the flash she remembered before the collision. She knew it was him, and today she was going to confirm it. Claire walked 2 blocks down and called a cab from a hidden number. She directed the driver to circle through the industrial district and stop a block before the warehouse. It was a quiet area, abandoned storefronts, graffiti-tagged fences, and old shipping containers stacked behind rusted gates. She spotted the SUV right away. It was parked across from the warehouse again, engine off this time. She sat on a bench at a nearby bus stop, pulled a pair of sunglasses low over her eyes, and watched. After 20 minutes, the front door of the warehouse opened, and Ethan stepped out. He was talking on his phone, animated, agitated. Claire pulled her hood slightly higher and raised her phone, snapping a series of discreet photos. She captured his face, his plate number, the logo on the warehouse gate. She sent the images to Jackie, her private investigator, along with a message. Found him. Confirm if this is where he works or if it's a front. Something is off. She stayed a little longer and watched as Ethan met someone else, tall, well-dressed, and unfamiliar. They shook hands, exchanged something in a folder, then disappeared back into the building. Claire didn't need more evidence that Ethan was involved in something shady. She needed to know how deep the connection went and where Daniel fit in. Later that day, Jackie replied with a short voice memo. You're not wrong to be suspicious. That building is owned by a dissolved LLC connected to an offshore account. Guess who signed the lease? Daniel Wallace. 2 years ago. Claire's chest tightened. Daniel had leased the warehouse? Why would he lie about it? He always claimed he worked in a corporate building across town. And why was Ethan meeting people there? Her fingers trembled as she texted back. Look into their financials. I want to know if there's fraud, if they're laundering anything, and if I was funding it. That night, she pretended nothing had changed. She helped Daniel set the table, listened to Megan talk about a new wellness podcast, and even laughed at an old memory they brought up, one that had really happened. Every moment was torture, but every moment was a step closer to answers. The next morning, Jackie called. I went deeper into Daniel's business, she said. It's not just shady, it's imploding. The warehouse is a shell. No actual transactions. Just a series of fake invoices. And you're listed as a silent investor. Claire's blood ran cold. How much? $250,000. All withdrawn from your joint account, but processed under your name. Claire fell silent. She remembered the arguments. How Daniel had insisted they use part of her inheritance from her mother to diversify. She had refused at first, but over time, he wore her down. She never saw the transfer details. He said he'd handle the paperwork. She never thought he'd lie. But now she knew. He not only lied, he tried to bury the evidence with her. She hung up the call and spent the rest of the afternoon gathering everything. The flash drive, the photos, her journal entries, screenshots from the insurance policy site. She printed backup copies and hid them in multiple places, in a hollowed-out book in the studio, inside an old paint tin, and even under the lining of her suitcase. She wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was preparing to expose them. But before she could go public, she needed one more piece of the puzzle. Megan. Claire invited her over for tea that evening while Daniel claimed he had to work late. Megan arrived, wearing a loose-knit sweater and too much perfume. She looked relaxed. Claire offered her a seat in the sunroom and made chamomile tea, carefully stirring in the drops of lemon like nothing was wrong. As they sat across from each other, Claire asked softly, "Do you ever think about what happened that night? The accident?" Megan shifted. "Of course. It was horrible. You almost died. But I'm so glad you're recovering." Claire sipped her tea, eyes watching closely. "I've started remembering bits and pieces." Megan went still. Claire continued, "I think someone might have been following me that night." Megan gave a thin, forced smile. "You're probably just confused. Trauma does that." Claire leaned forward. "I saw the car, Megan. It wasn't an accident. And I know who was driving." Megan's lips parted, but no words came out. Claire dropped the final blow. It was Ethan. For a moment, silence hung between them like a storm about to break. Then Megan's composure cracked. She looked away, eyes filling with something Claire couldn't quite name. Guilt? Panic? "I didn't know," Megan whispered. "I swear, Claire, I didn't know what he planned. He told me he was going to scare you. Just scare you. Teach you a lesson for something," Daniel said. She stopped herself. Claire's heartbeat slammed in her chest. "Daniel told him to do it?" she asked, voice shaking. Megan covered her face with her hands. They were desperate, Claire. The business was failing. Daniel thought if something happened to you, he could use the money, start fresh. Ethan owed him favors. "I didn't know they'd actually." Claire stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steel. "You knew enough. You stood by him. You let me think I was crazy. You came to the hospital pretending to care." Megan stood too, panic in her eyes. "Please, Claire. I didn't want this. I didn't want you to get hurt. I loved you." Claire stepped back. "Then you should have stopped them." Megan left in tears. Claire locked the door behind her and slumped against the wall. The confirmation had arrived. Not just suspicion, not just theory. She had proof. Daniel orchestrated the crash. Ethan executed it. Megan enabled it. That night, she made one final note in her journal. May 9th. It's confirmed. Daniel ordered it. Ethan did it. Megan knew. My life was a currency they were willing to spend. They thought I'd forget, but I didn't. Now it's my turn. Claire had spent most of her adult life believing that truth had a natural way of rising, like oil in water or light through the darkest cracks. But she had learned something since the crash. Truth didn't rise. It had to be pushed, dragged, screamed into daylight, especially when those who buried it stood to gain everything by keeping it hidden. After Megan fled her house in tears that night, Claire knew the time for waiting was over. Her pretending, her gathering of evidence, her nightly entries, it all led to this. She'd given them enough time, enough space, and enough rope. Now, it was time to tighten the noose. The next morning, she texted Jackie, "Meet me at the diner on 3rd, noon. Bring everything. It's time." Claire dressed with intention. She wore her mother's necklace, something Daniel never liked because it reminded her too much of old grief. She wore jeans, her hair tied back. Nothing too dramatic. She wanted to look steady, clear, unshakable. She had learned that fear didn't announce itself in screams. It crept in through silence and compliance. And she was done being silent. The diner was mostly empty, save for a few retirees and the usual lonely regulars. Jackie Cruz was already seated in a booth near the window, sipping black coffee and scanning documents in a slim leather folder. She was tough and efficient, Ex-law enforcement turned private investigator, and Claire trusted her the way one trusts a loaded gun. "Morning," Jackie said without looking up. "Got what you need." Claire slid into the booth. "Show me." Jackie turned the folder toward her. First came the photos. Ethan at the warehouse, Daniel at a private bank in the city, a late-night meeting between the two captured through a long lens shot. Then came the documents. Forged invoices, bank statements, money transfers to a Belizean account Claire had never authorized. But the most damning piece was a recorded conversation between Ethan and a man identified as Daniel. Jackie pressed play. A low, muffled voice spoke first. Daniel's voice. "It has to look like an accident. No blood, no mess. You said you could handle it." Ethan's voice responded, annoyed. "Scaring someone is one thing. Killing her? That wasn't the plan." "She's not going to die," Daniel replied coldly. "But if she ends up in a coma, that's not my fault. Just do your part and get your debt cleared." Claire's hand clenched into a fist. Jackie paused the recording. "You've got him," Claire whispered. Jackie nodded. "Hard. And I've got the crash report from a local traffic cam 2 miles before the curve. It caught Ethan's SUV following your car. Time-stamped. Police never pulled that footage because it wasn't on the crash site grid. But it's enough." Claire took a breath that felt like the first clean inhale in weeks. "What do you want to do with it?" Jackie asked. "We can go straight to the police, or we can expose him publicly first. The fraud, the murder attempt, everything." Claire didn't answer right away. She stared out the window as rain began to patter gently against the glass. The city looked different now. Not safer, but navigable. She had been walking through a minefield pretending it was a garden. Now she knew where the mines were, and she was ready to detonate them herself. "I want them all held accountable," Claire said. "Not just Ethan, not just Daniel. Megan, too." She knew. She didn't stop them. Jackie nodded slowly. "You're the client. I'll prep the police file. But I suggest we go one step further." "What's that?" Jackie smiled. "Let the media do what they do best. Shine the spotlight. Make it so public there's no way it gets swept under the rug." Claire thought for a moment. She pictured Megan crying on the couch. She pictured Daniel pacing their kitchen, calculating his lies. She pictured Ethan with that cold look behind the wheel. She remembered the sound of metal, the sudden absence of control, the smell of her own blood. "Okay," she said. "Let's burn it all down." 2 days later, Claire walked into the local police station with Jackie by her side. She carried a folder of physical documents, flash drives, and her handwritten journal entries. She requested to speak directly with a detective and gave a statement under oath. Jackie supported every claim with timestamps and evidence. The detective's expression changed by the minute, from professional skepticism to quiet horror to clear outrage. That night, Claire stayed in a hotel under Jackie's name. Her house no longer felt safe. The fallout was immediate. Police raided the warehouse. Ethan was arrested on-site for conspiracy to commit murder and reckless endangerment. The news broke across local media like wildfire. Woman fakes amnesia to uncover plot against her. Husband and business partner indicted. Articles quoted portions of Claire's statement and Jackie's findings. The insurance fraud alone was enough to seize Daniel's accounts. The attempted murder charge, supported by the recorded audio, sealed his fate. Daniel was arrested at his office. He never saw it coming. Megan, upon hearing the news, fled the city. But she didn't get far. She was caught at a train station 2 states away and brought in for questioning. Her knowledge of the plan and willful concealment landed her with charges of accessory after the fact and obstruction. Claire watched it all unfold not with glee, but with a quiet ache. These were the people she had once loved, trusted, shared holidays with. But betrayal had a way of erasing even the fondest memories. When it was over, when the court hearings were scheduled and the press had turned to other headlines, Claire did something unexpected. She returned to the crash site. It was a quiet road, lined with weeping trees. The guardrail had been replaced. A faint scar still marked the edge where her car had landed. She stood there in the late afternoon, wind in her hair, holding the final copy of her notebook. Every page was filled, every memory, every clue, every emotion. She lit a match and set the notebook ablaze. She didn't need it anymore. She watched the flames curl around the pages and whispered, "I remember everything." And I survived. In the weeks that followed, Claire filed for divorce and sued Daniel's company for restitution. With Jackie's help, she partnered with a nonprofit that helped victims of domestic betrayal and financial abuse. She spoke at 2 conferences under a pseudonym, sharing her story not for sympathy, but for awareness. The pain didn't vanish. It lingered, quiet and sharp in the moment she least expected. But she was healing now, not pretending, not surviving, living. On the anniversary of the crash, Claire received a single envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a torn piece of paper with one sentence written in Ethan's handwriting. "You were never supposed to survive." She folded the note and placed it in a lockbox with her legal documents. Then she walked to her studio, opened a new canvas, and began to paint again. Because some scars don't close, but they can still become art.